My name is Odira Morewabone. I am a filmmaker and an academic working and living in the UK. I'm here today with Donald Molosi, who's the director and writer of Moitobo. And in the context of the film, our conversation today will be around topics of migration, queerness, our country, Botswana, and how these experiences and of living away from home and being from the same country shape who we are. Yeah. Donald, we've had conversations in the past about our experiences in terms of how we are seen or treated as people who've moved away from home, and the sort of idea or the assumptions that people have of what we do or get up to in these sort of faraway Western countries that I guess are idealized, but also people who we are leaving back home would love to also come here.
Yes, and I think that this, desire to come here sometimes overlooks our experiences of being away from home.
Yeah.
I find that I struggle to find spaces or friendships where I can talk about the diaspora experience. And I mean friendships back home.
Mm-hmm.
Because there tends to be this imagined reality of what it's like to be in the diaspora from home. And we as people who live in the diaspora are not really given that chance in our informal relationships to talk about it.
Yeah, you can't, you're not allowed to struggle. You can't be struggling when you're in the UK.
Yeah.
I mean, you've made it.
Yes.
So what struggle do you have? What is the issue when you're surrounded by Diponto and everything that everyone desires back home?
But that's the thing that I guess people back home sometimes miss, is that we have real lives here. This is not a vacation, it's not a holiday. And when you live in a place, you pay taxes, you pay rent, you go broke, you live a full life.
Yeah.
And the idea that you always have some sort of stash of pounds ready to be sent as remittances back home, it needs to be questioned. I find that a lot of families really abuse people, family members that are in the diaspora, by making them live unlivable lives in the diaspora because all their pay is going back home.
Yeah.
And when you compound it with another thing that makes you different, which is being queer, then you are even almost paying for the acceptance.
Yeah.
Don't you think? I mean, maybe I'm being extreme.
No, there is a definite correlation with being different. Whether that's queerness or looking different, and maybe subconsciously wanting to be accepted by, it's not even family members. We were saying before about how in Botswana there's this sort of thing where people seem to have the autonomy to just give you their opinion on your own life, on things without soliciting that opinion. So in a way, for example, when my mother moved here to work here, her choosing to move away from Botswana to come and live here, also as a single woman from a relatively conservative country, she was being very different, and because of that difference, that she was displaying, she almost felt like she had to compensate for that, and that form of compensation was every time when she went back home, having a suitcase full of things, presents for all these family members and cousins who, some I knew and, had an important role in her life, but, some were, people who, I don't know, she seemed to hold up as important, but, important for different reasons, of which some are, this kind of subconscious sort of forming of acceptance. So, yeah, stepping out of that herd mentality, it sort of marks you as, someone who's different, but also someone who, in a way, can sort of be picked on.
Yes. Yeah, because you're a target because you're almost made to pay for having left the home unit. I don't know where this comes from, where we punish or tax people who leave the home unit, whether that is physically or that is in terms of ideas. But I don't know if it has to do with our grandfathers going off to the mines and leaving the family behind, and that was our first understanding of migrant labor in the 60s and 70s.
Yeah.
Or if that has to do with slavery, black people, that the one that you sent into slavery was the one who you expect things from. I don't know, but there is this thing in Botswana, like you're saying, of having to atone for having left.
Yeah.
And I really find it unhelpful, because it has gotten in the way of me making more profound relationships with my family, with my cousins, with people like that in adulthood, because they really don't see the person.
Yeah, I mean, I have experienced that, having lived here for so long, and I don't think when I go back home, back to Botswana, I don't think I'm different, but because I haven't grown up in that society, I look a bit different to people. So, that difference comes with lots of assumptions of, the kind of person that I am, or, the sexuality, the sexual preferences that I might have. Yeah. And, I've had family members, directly say to me, not want to kind of be seen or associated with me in certain contexts.
Isn't that painful? I mean, I've gone through it too, but it was sad. Yeah.
Yeah. And even kind of being, I've had experiences where I've been stopped and questioned by, police because I happened to look a certain way. Wow. And, even though I wasn't doing anything wrong, I don't know if, they wanted to confirm that what their assumptions were of who I might be, the kind of person I might be. But, there's, you're a target for looking different. And then, if you take where we live now in London, having that bit of personality and difference is something that's celebrated.
Absolutely.
It doesn't mark you out as a target. And I also often think with Botswana, in our population, being such a small population, we kind of, we're too in each other's business.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
I don't know if it makes us too much of a small family, you know. And if everyone feels like they can just like tell you what they think.
Exactly, and it's very uncomfortable, and it's something that we as Botswana have to reflect on, how we make other people feel. I mean, there's just questions that you hear strangers asking on the street. They have no place, that you hear from family. You know, I had to keep these things in mind as I was writing Moitobo, because the whole world is celebrating diversity. Botswana wants to celebrate sameness. Any image of diversity is threatening to whatever Botswana unit we have built. And that needs to be interrogated. We cannot have you know, the diaspora stories be all the same. So with Moitobo, I wanted to be like, there's the absence of queer stories in how we speak about diaspora. Because part of it, we force people to be different once they land back home. So we never get to see who they really are when they feel free. And so in Moitobo, I wanted to show this kind of diversity amongst us. We are different as Botswana, we are different as people, as queer people, and we come in all sorts of human diversity.
There's no one single experience. And you know, this sort of leads me back to how we met and how we sort of came to become friends. And you know, which was sort of after the legal challenge to the law that criminalized same-sex relationships, and the reactions to that, and you know, the reactions in the media and on social media, of course, were positive reactions, especially, you know, given that in Africa, not a lot of countries would, you know, pass a law that offered protective rights for people in same-sex relationships. So it was interesting because, even though this had happened, people still were fearful. They didn't quite trust I don't know whether they didn't trust the government or the citizens. I think it was more they don't trust the other citizens, because, you know, I had conversations with some other people that I met, and, you know, they overheard conversations like, oh, you know, and, you know, as if the law being, you know, as if offering these protective rights for this minority group of people, suddenly, like, it created, you know, these sort of new beings. People fail to realize that, you know, queer people have always been around. You know, it's not like because suddenly there's a law that protects them, they're just like suddenly going to sprout out of nowhere. They've always been there. You've always went to the toilet at the urinal. How did you know? You know, if the person you were peeing next to was gay or not?
You get your coffee from a coffee shop. Do you know if the barista is gay or not? Are they trans? Are they bi? Exactly. Who cares?
You know, so there were those kind of like conversations or comments, there were not conversations, there were comments being passed about, you know, this law that offered these protective rights. So I think because of that, people who these laws were meant to be protecting didn't really know how to react to that. You know, I don't know what your experience or opinion is on that.
Yeah, I think you're completely right that people didn't know how to react to the decriminalization of same-sex marriages in 2019. But I think it comes from the fact that we know what we are taught. So even if you grow up as a queer child, you know the homophobia you're taught from a young age, at church, at school, at home. So you know the work you had to do to remove the self-hate. So we start off with the hate. So I think even the queer people at that time were thinking, I know what we are all taught to believe. It's not what this law is doing. And the fear is that people might just go back to what they know, which is what we are all taught. We are all taught homophobia as a base. So any of us who believe anything other than homophobia have had to do the work of unlearning. So I think that was part of their hesitation, that we know there's nothing we are taught that equips us to welcome a bill like that, a law like that. I find it really unfortunate that people equate queerness with all sorts of despicable things. And that's why people feel, I think, a certain fear of, if these people are empowered, then whatever we equate queerness to will abound. And it's time that Botswana learned to see that queerness is in their children, their leaders, their role models. It's everywhere. It's part of the human experience. And that, so what if queer people are visible and everywhere? Everyone else is visible, and it's not. It's human diversity being celebrated.
It's interesting as well with the law being passed. How, you know, with some people there's again, you know, the comments of, you know, I don't have a problem with it, just as long as, you know, they don't do it in front of me, or they don't, you know, whatever it might be. You know, as long as I don't get to see it, or I don't get to, you know, which kind of then made me sort of think about my experiences growing up, and you know, what I experienced in terms of, I guess, relationships and people, you know, who in the context of queerness might, you know, might fit that. And also these experiences I tended to sort of experience these things in rural environments where you would expect people to be less accepting and be even more conservative and traditional in what they believe. But it seemed like these individuals who are, you know, somehow different were, I don't know if they necessarily thrived in that environment, but they were not as sort of kind of constantly being bothered by other people and their opinions. But it seemed like if you lived in if you were in a town, there was more people who sort of had an opinion, but also it was less accepting in urban environments where you would, you know, think that, I don't know, people are, they're educated and should know better. Maybe that reflects, it's more of a reflection of us and, you know, our, you know, preconceptions, passing judgment on people. But yeah, it's interesting.
I do agree. I completely agree. When you go to the cattle post or you go to Masimu, in small villages, no one cares that you're queer. And I use queer to mean you're different in any way. You know, I remember being in Mlambakwena and just having a great time, and I was probably, you know, I mean, I've always had the masculine and feminine in me, right? So I was being myself and no one cared. But the moment you were in Gaborone, in the capital city, all these categories, all the social media pronouncements of what a queer person looks like, all those things come into play. That's when you experience the homophobia in the urban areas. This makes me think a lot of the time whether this homophobia is new relatively, whether those places that are still bastions of our culture and how we behave, you know, were really the safe place for queer people. And maybe this homophobia came later in the Republic project, in this us being a country. And suddenly the sameness of everything was pushed so much. Botswana loved to be the same and the same and the same as the next person.
Isn't it interesting, like, speaking of sameness, the sort of taking our history of being a former British colony, that idea of sameness, but also as a colonial, as a former British colony, what we sort of desire and think is desirable as a group of people, as a country, things that we want from America and Britain, and a lot of our lives are sort of built around these sort of Western things, Western ideas, but then and which is also kind of like encouraged in a way, to want those things, to
I mean, the whole curriculum teaches us that.
Then as soon as you want to improve yourself, like what in mind, as in intellectually develop your knowledge of the world, and that knowledge involving, putting into conversation the idea that there's not only three types of relationships or sexuality, as the moral education textbook tells us. As soon as you start to mention those things, then the West and this idea of the West being desirable and us trying to emulate the West, then it becomes like, no. All this gay and trans is coming from Britain and the U.S. and but on the other hand, you're told to be looking at those countries as examples.
Yeah, we definitely are. We are taught to be colonialist, even when it hurts us. We are taught it at church, at school. The whole curriculum is that we as people suffer from a lack of knowledge, as you're saying. That lack of knowledge is enforced by a chronically colonial curriculum that we still choose to follow. And so when you have a lack of knowledge just about human diversity, who people can be, it's easier for homophobia to thrive. We, for example, grew up with examples of men dressed in women's clothing, performing, people like Joniko Bedi, people like Jeff Matata, even Franco, all of our biggest stars with these, braids and all this stuff. And they were always playing in that space. But we would never look at that and sort of say we are accepting of human diversity, because we don't have the knowledge that is human diversity. We think it's an act.
It's a performance.
It's so we suffer from a deep lack of knowledge, and the colonial curriculum is not helping.
And that performative aspect, that sort of also can become problematic in a way, or can present queerness as this kind of act, which a lot of people who have a problem with people being who they are will say, they're only acting, or why can you act like this?
I wonder if they think they are straight acting. Do they think they are acting straight?
They always that's the thing. There's always a questioning of the people who are being different, but that questioning is never turned around and posed at the group, because I guess there's a belief that the group is doing the right thing, or the group is always right because everyone's doing the same thing. That's the right thing to do. Which is not necessarily, the case.
No. It's not. It's not. And you see that we have this binary understanding of male or female, man or woman, and there isn't knowledge about the fact that there's a human spectrum along which we can exist at any point. And if we could change our curriculum, I really believe if we change the education system, we would be able to teach human diversity in a way that will not implode in future. As what we are doing now, we are cultivating such strong homophobia that we've never seen. I have never seen this level of homophobia in Botswana in my lifetime. And a lot of it comes from the classroom, the church, social media, and it's a ticking time bomb.
And also I remember when we had this conversation around these topics before, you sort of talking about where this is coming from, but also the fact that it seems like it's young people who are more opposed to the idea of people being different or someone being queer, or, which is, I don't know, it's a bit puzzling for me.
But it's exactly an indictment on our generations and older. We did not teach human diversity to the younger ones. We taught them the same hateful rhetoric. And they now have the tools to express themselves that we never had before. So they are able to scream into the megaphone of social media and say, that's gay, that's gay. But we failed to teach them any better. And we failed to change the curriculum. We failed to even teach in our own homes to raise children who know that people come in all sorts of expressions.
And on that point, I think it would be good to bring it back to Moitobo. And so with the film, given sort of this landscape, especially in Botswana, what are your hopes for the film? What do you hope the film sort of does in terms of offering some form of education, or
I am hoping that, first of all, I realize there's a certain way that Botswana perceive me in general, since I've been in sort of the public eye since I was a child. There's a way they're invested in what I do, who I am, and the messages I sent. So far, they've always been messages of a nation that wants to unite and should unite. Now, I'm asking for us to find a different consensus. When I spoke about how our country was formed and the first president marrying a white woman, we were all ready to rally behind that because it's a good message, it's unifying. Now I'm saying, let's find other ways of unifying, right? Other ways that include others. We unified across race, we unified across all these other things. Now let's unify across who people are, So I think with Moitobo, I want to really upset a lot of the people who are, sort of marching against homosexuality in Botswana and all of this. I want to upset them because they need to be pushed against. And I also want to give hope to the people who are being bullied by these homophobes. To give hope and say, your biggest theater star, actor, Broadway actor, is going to speak to the most unpopular issues that are urgent because they are urgent. So if you're going to look at what I'm looking at, then I'm going to have to look at the right things. And with Moitobo, I'm saying, here's where my eye is. Let's look there. So I hope that it shows courage and it inspires other people to not try so much to be a good boy or good girl in the media of society that you lose sight of what your power could be used for.
I mean, we were talking earlier as well about sort of the younger generation. I feel weird saying younger generation. I still feel young. And yeah, the sort of quickness, the sort of nowadays it seems like there's, I don't know, a lack of debate on things. I mean, you know, we're talking about people being maybe easily offended, but also not willing to have conversations and debates about, you know, the thing that they find offensive, and this sort of canceling, you know, having this sort of cancel culture, but also with technology now, you know, you can just block things and choose not to engage with them, and then you know, people are surprised when people like Donald Trump and the, you know, parts of the West are turning right wing, and they're like, where did that come from?
Yeah.
You know, because you've chosen to exist in this bubble and not engage with those things, and when they happen, you're surprised. So yeah, it's I think it's good that we're sort of pushing back and putting these things into sort of the public sphere for people to be, you know, challenged and offended, and hopefully, you know, come back with, you know, their argument, you know, and it's not about, you know, who's right or who's wrong sometimes. It's about having these conversations and expanding people's minds and perceptions and ideas on, you know, what it means to live somewhere else, or what it means to be from a certain country, and, you know, the experiences, and you know, because it's easy to to sort of be here and pretend, and, you know, that, you know, everything's perfect, and you're sending all this stuff that you're expected to send, and putting yourself into difficult situations. I think it's, you know, these conversations need to be had. You know, as much as we will face criticism and and UK mo di pontong re bua ka ra struggler ba, you know, har na di pont.
But you see that you're pointing to a really important thing, and you're completely right. We live in a time when you can curate your reality into this sanitized, I mean, thanks to social media, this sanitized view of the world, where you only consume what you agree with, etc. Now we see that mediatized culture playing out in real life, where, as you're saying, the young people are much more polarized than we were. They take much more extreme stances on things. And the time has never been more ripe for stories like Moitobo to come to life, to remind us that despite the fact that on your social media feed you see no queer people, they exist. And this is how their lives are, and we, in the end, have more in common than we do different. You know, so I really agree with you. The idea that you could get cancelled for having an idea that's maybe, you know, is true to your experience, but it's now outdated. Right.
And you're almost kind of expected to know, to just know things, or, you know, know what the right thing is or what the right thing to say is without having a conversation, or and then that sort of, it can induce fear in people expressing opinions, or, you know, saying things, because they feel like they'll have to publicly apologize, you know, later on because they said the wrong thing. So you're not allowed to make, it's almost like you're not allowed to make mistakes anymore.
You're not, and that silences a lot of people.
And learn, because we learn by making mistakes. You know, people are going to get offended, but, you know, if you're silenced and you hold those views, you still have those views, but you don't get the opportunity to have someone offer something different to those views that might maybe change your mind,
Yeah.
or at least like, you know, plant some seed that that's not the only way, or that's not how things are anymore.
Yeah.
You know,
but we were raised by community in the sense that you had to play with the neighborhood kids. You had to interact with people face to face. You had to go tell your crush, can we go on a date?
Yeah.
And actually have a physical date.
Yeah, no caution.
So now the difference, I guess, could be that the generation that's being raised on cell phones, everything is virtual.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you can even look at the emoticons they have. Some of those things don't even exist in the physical anymore.
Yeah.
So things like a CD, a record, a cassette tape.
Mixtapes, for example, you know, like I hear people talking about, you know, sort of dating and like people asking for like, you know, for their like Spotify playlists, and, you know, and that, you know, like when you used to make mixtapes, like you'd sit at the radio and like be ready to, you know, because the DJ would speak over the song and at the wrong moment. So that was like you know, like you invested time. That was like a, you know, a real kind of like, I don't know, love language. It wasn't just like picking out songs and just putting, you know, add to playlists.
Exactly.
It was a labor of love, you know? It was like physical. I mean, you know, maybe we're just being old.
Nostalgic.
Nostalgic.
People.
And
yeah, but the technology has allowed the people back home to be way more in touch with us in the diaspora than ever before. That can sometimes mean for someone like me and others who have found sort of a queer free existence, not even just queer, just to be myself, because I think my ideas, I'm just very different from
most people in general.
You're always yourself, innit? But the fact that the continental Africans, I'll speak about Africans because we are African, have more access than ever before to diaspora Africans. Sometimes that can be a source of stress. And I wanted to look at that in Moitobo to say, when your homophobic family back home has access to you by just dialing a number on WhatsApp, how does that breach your reality? How does that breach your freedoms that you have found away from home? Because in the story, we have this brother who just picks up the phone and just spews out homophobia in the name of God.
Do you think that people back home, like our families, do you think they actually know, maybe not the, you know, the word itself, homophobia, or, you know, transphobic, or the, you know, do you think they know that they're doing that, or is it just this learned behavior of, you know, that's not what the rest of society look like or do or behave, and they're just kind of like spewing all this stuff because they've learned from a young age, you know, like you're saying, you know, young people are just taught that homophobic sort of rhetoric. Do you think it's that?
I think it's, again, a lack of knowledge. You know, if you don't know that a human being can self reflect, you're not going to self reflect. And we have created a society where there are rules, you know, I finish primary school and then I go secondary school and then I get married and then there's this kind of choreography that you're supposed to dance to. And there's no room made for self-reflection. So I do believe that some people just don't know better. But I think people can see that the world is changing. And there is something very decided on their part to refuse to move along with the world. So I'm not, you know, I don't know. I'm not sure, but I do know that some people do mean to be hurtful because they want to highlight how different they are from you, how normal they are compared to you, and how they as a family member are the only one who accepts you and therefore are your messiah. Yes, there are those dynamics. And you know, I think they are just as problematic.
There's never there's never kind of a full, I don't know, I feel like there's always some form of transaction, or in the relationships with family members, and
is the text of being different. Your text on that, where other people come into space, a family space. You come with your head bowed because you're different. You contribute a little bit more to the family things because you're different. There's this difference tax that we have to pay. And sometimes the difference is simply you left the country. You left the country. That alone will mean you now have extra responsibilities that another family member doesn't have. Because how dare you leave the family unit? Again, it's a punished action.
And that's actually a good point, because the leaving the country doesn't necessarily mean you're better off, or you're doing well, or you're doing better than maybe a family, a cousin who has a better paid job, but lives in Botswana. But because you're the one who's living in a country with the pounds, they think you're seen as the one with the money.
Yes.
Even though your cousin is there, doing a lot better than you. Not to kind of like compare, but that's the reality. Sometimes.
Because if you're in Botswana, you get your first job, you're on a car scheme, you're on a home thing. You are going to have cars and homes within 2 years. You can't really do that kind of thing in the UK. It would not be advisable either. For someone like me, I just like to live simply. But it's so sad that these taxes compound on each other. We as black people often talk about black tax. The idea that if you're the one who went to university, you have to give back. If you're the one who left, again, you have to give back. Now, that black tax with the tax of being different is what boy in Moitobo has to deal with. You are from a black community. There's certain things that are expected. Again, I really want to know why in our history that is. And then on top of that, you're queer. There's another tax. So that means this is someone who has to overcompensate every time they interact with family. And, we can see in the film how he's not used to standing up to this, or we're not expected to say anything back.
No.
It's uncles and aunties we respect. If they tell you, your hairstyle looks this, your body is fat, you're just supposed to basically thank them in a way. So boy is having to see that. How much black tax is he willing to pay? How much tax of being different is he willing to pay? 0. And that gives us a whole new opening to who he could be.
That's a shame, because sometimes, not sometimes, but choosing to not pay that tax, often means being cut off from your family. And as much as you're probably not really getting much from the family unit in terms of support, it's still a shame that
it creates a lot of insecurity for a diaspora African who's already away from home. But I think, Odira, there's something to be said about how we practice family and kindness. It's always with the expectation of something back. I don't know what that says about us.
Earlier we were talking about getting calls from family members from back home, but it's never getting a call. It's almost kind of rare to get a call. Or getting a message. It's always kind of the other way around. You're expected to, even I remember when my mom first moved here, it's expensive to call back. It's also expensive for someone here to call back. But it was always my mom calling back, calling home. It was no one ever called her.
That's the black tax.
No one ever called her to just check on how she was.
Because they don't care how we are in the diaspora. They don't care.
And now, I was talking to a friend the other day about how, about my mother's age, and although she's mid-70s, and I don't think she's that old, but I think how much she worked here contributed to her aging, sort of like physically. But no one ever really checked in on her.
No.
I remember times where she'd be coming from work and then she'd fall asleep on the bus and miss her stop. So that's how tired she was. But a lot of this was, it wasn't just about her, making sure that she's earning money to live. It was also making sure she's earning enough money to send back home.
But no one asks her, how many shifts do you have to work? How many jobs do you have to work for us to be building mansions?
Yeah.
Because they're building themselves houses back home with what you send.
Yeah, to send your grandchildren to private schools and
And then I'm here in England at a food bank.
Yeah.
And this speaks to a lot of people's realities.
Yeah.
A lot of us in the diaspora are struggling, are living in these precarious economies where you everything is money, right?
Yeah.
Back home, not everything is money.
Yeah.
You can get a child into private school just because you know someone.
Yeah.
Etc. So they don't appreciate the fact that it's a different reality here. We have lost our humanity for each other. It's very hard now for a Motswana to think a Motswana who's left Botswana is still as human as they are or goes through the same human struggles.
Yeah, people, when I go back home, like the few friends that I still have, especially friends who I grew up with in Jwaneng, because the sort of last time we really were together was like when we were 15, 14. And the way that I am, the way that I behave towards other people, sometimes my friend, who, we're really good friends. We've stayed. He's one of two people that we've stayed in touch since I moved here. But he's surprised that like my, I don't know if it's not even kindness. It's just like general, I don't know, humanity.
Yeah.
There's this kind of like transactional relationships, and in Botswana where it's like, what am I getting from this? What what do you have to offer? And just taking time to talk to someone without any expectations, or just interacting with people without expecting anything back. And also, when I go back, he'll offer like his car, and I'll be like, I'll just service the car because that's a nice thing to do.
Yeah.
But then when I I remember like talking to my my brother about this, and I was like, my friend lent me the car, so I'm just gonna service it and give it back to him.
Yeah.
And he was like, why? Why would you do? It's always like negative. It's never,
because we've lost our shared humanity. We've lost sight of our shared humanity. We are now a very materialistic people. Odira, I don't know any people in the world more materialistic than us in the southern part of Africa.
Yeah.
We are all about cars, we're all about labels on clothes. And those things are so much more important to us now, for some reason, than connecting at a human level. So you'll find that in Botswana, a lot of friendships or dating or whatever, it's all a transaction. It's all a transaction. All my friends who live in Botswana as expatriates complain they are never invited to a Motswana's house because there's always a transaction. You going to a Motswana's house, they'll treat you the way they treat their own family, like us. How Dira Aboa or Donald Aboa? So going into people's houses is no longer a thing of going to your house to know you better.
No. It's to judge. It's to look at how this person, what they have and what they don't have, and, what it means for your, I guess, relationship, your friendship. What are you going to get from it? Because, it was really strange to me that, someone reacted that way when I said, it wasn't even, it was just kind of showing appreciation for, you let me use your car, I drove it around. The least I can do, I'm not paying for like car rental. The least I can do is just like get it serviced.
Yeah.
Make sure that, you're not gonna like have a flat tire or something's gonna fall off after I've left.
But that behavior, that decency, graciousness, is probably more aligned with your childhood in Botswana, that time of the 90s. Yeah. That's when we were taught to treat people like that. Now, it's about how much are you giving me? Yeah. I've literally, it's a bit ridiculous. You cannot really go to Botswana, back to Botswana as a diasporan, and hang with friends without expecting that you will lose a lot of money. Yeah. My friends who are in other cultures, like when I go to India or when I go to Morocco, you as the guest, the one who's returning, you're the one being taken to every coffee shop, and you're the one they're happy to see you. In Botswana, it's the other way around. Yeah. Again, the tax of having left. Yeah. This sameness, this kind of small community sameness is enforced so much that sometimes work like Moitobo can only happen once I'm outside Botswana. Yeah. Because me trying to do it at home, even outside of the homophobia, just the way that people don't know how to support something that's not their brainchild. Yeah. We've lost that.
Yeah. I think there's there's space to for more exploration of I remember we talked a little bit about the migration experience and these sort of things that we face especially in regards to going back home and the not being welcomed in sort of a loving way where you're welcomed in a way that's more what are you bringing and
of course.
The expectations to pay for everything. You've just paid for a £1,000 flight to
go see them.
Yeah, see them.
But you're not enough.
No.
As the price, you're not enough. You have to be added on to with money. Then we can accept that. This is shown by the fact that if you go home and you're not willing to spend £1,000 on random people you don't know that your cousin brings, your cousin will not speak to you. Yeah. So it shows our families are not willing to interact with us when we return unless you are paying for that. There's a tax that is actually actual money.
Yeah, because they've told people, UK. Then, when you come back, that you being in the UK, you're expected to show that you've been in the UK.
Yeah. Is this romanticization of leaving home? Is this obsession with the West, where it's assumed that by you having stepped on the soil of the West, now you come back as the family mascot. Yeah. You have to be paraded through the village. Odira's home, Odira's home, and you're spending money at every single household you're being taken to. What is the point?
When you lived there, you didn't know you didn't go to these households and greet everyone.
Yeah. So we cease to be enough for our families once we've left. You always have to offset the value you lost with money.
Yeah, we become props.
Yeah, you become props. You become a thing that gets brought up to show that we also have a family member who's breathing the same air as the Queen of England. Is this nonsense?
Yeah, yeah.
And when you are queer, you have to work extra hard to get that acceptance. There was a time when, I guess, in my teen years, I esteemed that acceptance. But I think by the time I was 20, I was just like, no, I'm not going to do that. And I saw how that changed my relationships with my family. There were people who never had a problem with who I am, and they've stayed the same. But the majority of people wanted to be paid for them to accept me. Yeah. So you get an uncle or a cousin who says, oh, now I don't have a problem with your quote-unquote lifestyle. Yeah. Again, wrong word to use. But let's hang out. And hanging out with that cousin means you are paying. Yeah. You are paying all the time. And if you show up to them and say, oh, I'm just here for a pep talk. Pep talk closed. Yeah. You will not be given the humanity. You will be excommunicated. So I think queer people in the diaspora lose a lot of family because their tax is compounded like that.
Yeah. And then, you get phone calls and messages like, utaling khai, that type of
coming
message.
To do what?
Yeah, because when you get to a point, where you can't afford that taxation, and you decide to not go, or in my case, for example, sometimes when I go, I don't tell anyone that I'm coming.
Yeah. Same here.
And I just enjoy the people that enjoy my company.
Yeah.
And are happy for me to be there without me providing and proving that I've been living in England.
But where does this come from? Is it hunger? Is it poverty? Why do we think like that? Or is it an obsession with the West?
I think, I don't, in my family anyway, no one is desperately hungry.
Botswana generally are not.
So, I don't know. It's not even a you're living abroad thing. It's just a thing of, if you look or seem to have more than me, then I have a right to just sit here and you provide things. It's the same with other people who are doing well, but still living in the same country, and just because they happen to live in a particular house or drive a certain car, it's seen as. But then also that comes with that whole thing of the obsession with the materialistic, and so you might be driving that car, but maybe you're not doing that well. But it's the assumptions of what materialistic things mean. So yeah, you end up paying that tax because you're doing better.
Because you've ceased to be enough.
Yeah, you seem like you're doing better. So
And that damages relationships. I wish Botswana knew how much it damages relationships for you to be seen as the one from abroad who's coming to buy me beer.
Yeah.
That, and I can tell you, I've lost so many family members to that.
Yeah, I don't tell anyone I'm coming anymore.
Yeah.
I just go go see my mom. And she knows now not to announce to anyone that I'm coming back. I spend time with her. If someone happens to come check in on her, which is very rare, then they will realize that I'm there.
Yeah.
And then they'll be the ones that spread the or like the last time my sister, because I went to check in on my brother because he wasn't very well, and then somehow my sister found out that I was there, and I get this message, don't do this, instead of her just saying, being happy that her younger brother is back and
there
coming to see
tax.
me.
There's your tax.
Going to see me, she sort of demands that I go and pay my respects.
Yes, because we are not happy to see you until you have given us reason to be happy to see you.
Yeah, just me being there is not,
it's not enough. And that's such a bitter pill to swallow.
Yeah. It damages relationships.
And why do you think I struggle with this? This, when are you coming home? When are you coming home? Why is that question part of every conversation you have with everyone back home?
Yeah.
What do they want you to come home to do?
Yeah. And also, why can't they, it's not like it's a huge thing anymore to, travel to the UK, Why can't they come to see us?
Yeah.
Or
why can't they even call you?
Yeah.
Why can't they WhatsApp you?
It's you don't always have to pay anymore, You have to pay.
Isn't it always you in the diaspora that has to call?
Yeah, they're
even
always,
on a free thing like WhatsApp?
Yeah. Everyone has a smartphone now.
Yeah.
And they think of you when they don't have airtime. That's when you get a message, you know, asking for the ponto, and and they always know the right sort of amount.
And there's a kind way that a family member can ask, when are you coming home? We want to see you, right? But it's never that way.
No.
Our when are you coming home is always...
There's always
it's a bit of a telling off.
Yeah.
It's a bit of asserting power over you. And some people will literally say, come suffer like we do. Because the assumption is that you're not suffering in Europe. Yeah, I've had someone say that, and I was just like,
that's not
well,
gonna be
yeah. We haven't had many conversations after that.
Yeah.
But this is a family member. This is how we lose family members.
Yeah.
Once you leave, and I also realized that the fact that I never asked for permission to be myself or to be whatever, I just woke up and thought, I'm comfortable in a wig. We're going to post a picture of me in a wig.
Who are you supposed to ask permission from?
And all these cousins come underneath and comment and do whatever. And I treat them, I return the same energy.
Yeah.
That damages the relationship. So now you have people who say, if I'm not allowed to have an opinion about your life and tell you, then you're cut off. And I say, well, let's cut each other off then.
Yeah.
And that's how queer people lose family, especially when they're in the diaspora, that you have to make a decision. Are you going to live your life in your immediate environment? Or are you going to be caught up with a reality across the ocean that is not in your best interests? And Boy makes that decision in the film of saying, listen, I'm not going to listen to my brother Ace, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to discover who I can be in my newfound freedom. Freedom from family, not from anything else, but freedom from family.
It was great to have this conversation with you. There's lots more that we can talk about.
Thank you.
Yes, the topic of migration. I think it would be interesting to explore that in more depth.
Thank you. Thank you so much for helping me understand how we lose value to our family when we migrate. A sad state of affairs.
Yeah.